I reckon some stories choose us, not the other way around. This one came to me the way most true things do, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. It is about a mother who gave everything she had and then found a way to give more. About an old woman who stopped pretending she couldn't hear. And about the stubborn, ordinary miracle of folks who decide to care when it would be easier not to. If you have ever sat up late with a sick animal, or loved something that couldn't say your name, or wondered whether doing the right thing would make any difference at all, well, this one might stay with you a while. It is not a fancy story. No heroes in shining armor, just regular people, doing what they could, when they could. So pour yourself some coffee, settle into your chair. This one takes its time, the way the good ones always do. The smell reached her before anything else. Rust, old metal bleeding into damp air. Something else underneath sour, sharp, wrong. The kind of smell that settles into your chest and stays there. Delia pressed her nose against the small body tucked between her front legs. She had been licking it since first light crept through the gaps in the tarp above her cage. Licking and licking, the way she had done when it was born 3 days ago, the way mothers do when they are trying to wake something that will not wake. The body was stiff now, cold in a way her own warmth could not fix. But she kept licking, kept pushing it toward her belly with her muzzle, toward the others, 4 of them, still squirming, still seeking, still alive, as if hiding it among the living could undo what had already happened. Above her, floorboards creaked, footsteps, heavy, familiar. Delia's body went rigid. She stopped licking, stopped breathing. Almost, every muscle pulled tight, waiting. The footsteps moved across the floor overhead. A door banged. Glass clinked against glass bottles being moved, rearranged, emptied. Then nothing. He was not coming down. Not tonight. She let out a slow breath, her ribs pressing against the wire floor of the cage. There was not much of her left to press. She could feel her own bones now. Sharp ridges beneath fur that had gone dull and matted months ago. When she shifted, her hips scraped metal. When she breathed too deep, something in her chest rattled like a stone in a tin can. But she was not the one who mattered. The 4 remaining pups squirmed against her belly, mewling, searching for milk she barely had. Their eyes were still sealed shut, their ears still folded close. They knew nothing of the world beyond her body, the rusted cage, the tarp that blocked the sun, the man whose footsteps meant pain. To them, she was the world, and she was failing them. One of them, the smallest, the one who always struggled to find a teat, latched on and began to suck. Delia felt the pull, felt her body trying to give what it did not have. Her stomach cramped, her muscles shook. She had not eaten in 2 days. The bowl in the corner of the cage held something that might have been bread once. Green with mold now. The water dish had dried to a white crust days ago, but the pups needed milk, and her body, in its desperate way, was breaking itself down to make it just a little longer. Some part of her thought, if dogs think in words at all, just hold on a little longer and maybe they will be strong enough. Strong enough for what? She did not know. The other litters had grown strong too. And then one morning she had woken to an empty cage and the sound of truck doors slamming and coins being counted. She never saw any of them again. This time would be different. This time she would... A sound, not from above, from outside. Delia's ears, one standing straight, one flopped down from an old wound that never healed, right swiveled toward the noise. Voices, low, unfamiliar, not the man, someone else. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She gathered the pups closer, curling her body around them, pressing herself into the shadows of the cage. The voices grew closer. Footsteps on gravel, The creak of the back gate, the one that had not opened in months. Then light. Blinding. Sudden light as someone pulled the tarp away. Delia squinted, pressed herself flatter against the cage floor. The pups squealed at the cold air rushing in, at the world suddenly breaking through. A face appeared above her. Human, male. Something covering his nose and mouth. Eyes that looked at her and then looked away. Just for a second, the way people do when they see something that hurts too much to hold. "Emily," the man's voice, muffled. "Over here, quick!" More footsteps. Another face, a woman this time. Gray-streaked hair pulled back tight. Eyes that did not look away. The woman crouched down, peering through the wire mesh. Her gaze moved over Delia, the ribs showing through, the matted fur, the torn ear, and then down to the pups huddled beneath her, down to the small, still form that Delia had not stopped trying to warm. The woman's hand rose to her mouth. "How long?" she whispered. "Hard to say. Neighbor called it in around 2 this morning. Said she'd been hearing them for months, but tonight was different. Said the mother was making a sound like—" The man paused, swallowed. "Like something giving up." The woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached toward the cage latch. Delia snarled, or tried to. What came out was closer to a wheeze, a weak, rattling sound that was more desperation than threat. She pulled her lips back, tried to look dangerous. The woman did not flinch, did not pull her hand away. "Easy, Mama," she said, her voice low and steady. "Easy now. We ain't here to hurt you." Delia did not believe her. She had heard gentle voices before, had learned what came after. But she had no strength left to fight, no strength left to do anything but lie there. Teeth bared, body trembling, waiting for whatever came next. The woman turned to the man. "We take the whole cage. She won't leave them, and they're too young to move on their own." "And the one that's—" "I know," the woman's voice caught. "Just for a second. I see it. We'll take care of that too." She looked back at Delia, at the eyes watching her with something beyond fear, beyond anger, something that looked almost like surrender. "You've been doing this alone for so long," the woman said quietly. "You don't have to anymore." Delia did not understand the words, but something in the voice, something she had not heard in a very long time, made her stop baring her teeth, just for a moment, just long enough to breathe. 2 lots over. Sarah Johnson stood at her kitchen window, watching the lights. Her hands shook around her coffee mug, the one Harold had given her, the one with the chip on the handle she never could throw away. She had not slept since the phone call, had not done anything but stand here, watching, waiting. Did I do the right thing? The question circled in her head like a dog chasing its own tail. Ain't my business. It was never my business. But she had called anyway, at 2 a.m, standing in her nightgown, hands trembling so bad she could barely find the numbers. And now there were trucks in Arthur's driveway, people in uniforms, lights cutting through the dark. She thought about Harold, about what he would say if he were still here, still sitting in his chair by the window, still shaking his head at the evening news. You spend your whole life keeping your nose out of other folks' affairs. Sarah, one day, you're gonna look around and find you got nothing left. Just an empty house and a bunch of things you wish you'd done. She set the mug down, pressed her palm flat against the cold window glass. I heard you, she said to no one, to the night, to whatever might be listening. I finally heard you. The trucks began to pull away. One by one, Sarah watched until the last taillight disappeared around the corner. Then she sat down at her kitchen table, put her head in her hands, and did something she had not done in 8 years. She wept. Sometimes the smallest voice can make the biggest difference. If this story reached you tonight, we would be glad to know where you are, your town, your kitchen table, your quiet corner of the world. Leave a word below if you like. We are all neighbors here. The house squatted at the end of Miller's Lane like something the neighborhood had given up on. Grass in the front yard stood knee-high, gone to seed months ago. A pickup truck sat on 4 flat tires, rust bleeding down its doors in long brown streaks. The porch sagged in the middle where the boards had rotted through, and someone had nailed a piece of plywood over the gap instead of fixing it proper. Folks drove past without looking, had been doing it for years. That was the whole idea. Out back, past the dead washing machine and the engine blocks bleeding oil into the dirt. 4 cages stood stacked against a cinder block wall. Wire mesh, rusted latches, plastic water bowls cracked and bone dry. 3 of the cages held dogs' ribs showing, coats dull, too worn down to bark anymore. They had learned. Barking brought the boots. Barking brought the belt. Silence was safer. The 4th cage sat in the darkest corner, shoved beneath the overhang where the rain gutters had rusted through. A mildewed tarp covered it, weighted down at the corners with bricks. No light got through, no air moved. This was where Delia lived. If living was the right word for it, she had come here 2 years back, maybe 3. Time had a way of blurring when every day looked the same. She remembered hands grabbing her by the scruff, a truck bed, a cage door slamming shut. Before that, pieces, running through tall grass, the smell of pine needles, a voice calling a name that might have been hers. Sunshine warm on her back, a hand that touched without hurting. But that was before. Before did not count anymore. Now there was only the cage, the hunger that never stopped, the pups she could not keep safe. She had quit counting the litters, the first time they came for her babies. She had thrown herself against the wire until her muzzle bled, bit at the hands reaching in, fought until she had nothing left. They took them anyway. The second time, she fought less. The third time, she did not fight at all. But this litter was different. She could feel it in the way the smallest one struggled to breathe, in the way the others pressed close even while they slept. They were weaker than the ones before, born too small, too early, born to a mother running on empty, and still she curled around them each night. Still she let them drain what little her body could make. Still she held on, even when holding on made no sense at all. Outside the tarp, footsteps crunched on gravel. Delia's ears went flat against her skull. Her body turned to stone. The footsteps stopped right above her cage. A lighter clicked. The smell of cigarette smoke drifted down through the gaps. Then a voice, low and slurred with drink. "Gonna have to do something about these pups." The kitchen clock read 2:17 when Sarah Johnson quit pretending she could sleep. She stood at the sink in her housecoat, cold water running over her fingers, staring out at nothing. The house pressed in around her the way it always did after midnight, too quiet, too empty, full of spaces where Harold used to be. 8 years gone now, 8 years of sleeping alone in that big bed, eating supper alone at that long table, talking to the television just to hear a voice that was not her own. She turned off the tap, dried her hands on the dish towel hanging from the oven handle. That was when she heard it. Not the sounds she had trained herself to ignore, the single dog howling from the Miller place, the one she drowned out with late-night game shows and an extra sleeping pill. This was different, high and thin. Multiple voices, crying out together, puppies. Sarah's hands found the edge of the counter and held on tight. "Ain't my business." She said it out loud. The words falling flat in the empty kitchen. Whatever goes on over there ain't none of my concern. The crying did not stop. It rose and fell, wavering, desperate. And underneath it came another sound, low, broken, unlike anything she had heard before, like someone trying to call for help but forgetting how, like breath being squeezed from lungs that had given up. The mother dog, making a sound like the world was ending and nobody cared. Sarah pressed her palms against her ears. It did not help. The sound cut through anyway. She thought about Harold, about the last real talk they had, 3 days before his heart gave out. He had been upset about something she could not even remember what anymore, and he had said things, hard things, true things. You spend your whole life keeping your nose out of other folks' affairs. Sarah, one day you're gonna look around and find you got nothing left. Just an empty house and a pile of things you wish you'd said. She had not spoken to him proper after that. Just hospital rooms and machines beeping, and the chaplain asking if she wanted to say goodbye. The crying from the Miller place grew louder, or maybe she was just listening harder now. Sarah looked at the phone on the wall, the old rotary Harold had put in himself. Back when they first bought the house, she had never switched it out. Could not bring herself to. They gonna think I'm some crazy old woman, calling in the middle of the night about the neighbor's dogs. Her hand reached for the receiver anyway. I don't know what's happening over there. Not for certain. Could be nothing at all. She dialed. The wheel clicked back after each number, slow and deliberate. A voice answered, young, tired, professional. Animal control emergency line. What's your situation? Sarah opened her mouth. The words stuck somewhere between her chest and her throat. Ma'am, you there? I don't. Her voice cracked. She swallowed. Tried again. I don't see nothing. I just hear. Every night for months now, I hear them. But tonight, there's puppies crying. And the mama, she's making this sound like She stopped. How did you put a sound like that into words? Like something giving up? She finally said, like something that's got nothing left to lose. The operator asked questions. Address? Neighbor's name? How long had this been going on? Sarah answered each one. Every word felt like pulling teeth. When she hung up, her legs would not hold her anymore. She sank into Harold's chair, the one by the window, the one she never sat in, and stared at the phone. Did I just do that? Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. What if I'm wrong? What if it's nothing? What if Arthur finds out it was me? But underneath the fear, something else, something she had not felt in a long, long time. The crying from the Miller place kept on, muffled by walls and distance. But for the first time in months, Sarah did not reach for the television remote, did not go hunting for the sleeping pills in the medicine cabinet. She sat in the dark kitchen, in Harold's chair, and she listened, really listened, and waited. 43 minutes later, headlights swept across her front window. Sarah pushed herself up, joints popping, and made her way to the glass. A white van turned onto Miller's Lane, moving slow. Behind it came a county sheriff's cruiser. No sirens, no flashing lights, just tires crunching gravel in the dark. They stopped in front of Arthur's place. Sarah watched figures climb out, flashlight beams cutting through the night. Voices too low to make out. Someone pounded on the front door. A light came on inside the house. More voices, louder now, Arthur's slurred growl rising above the rest. Then the figures moved around the side of the house, toward the backyard, toward the cages. Sarah pressed her hand flat against the cold glass. Please, she thought, please let it not be too late. Minutes crawled by. 5, 10, 15. Then, coming around from behind Arthur's house, 2 people carrying something between them. A cage, wire mesh glinting in the moonlight. Inside the cage, a dark shape huddled in the corner. The shape was moving. Sarah's breath fogged the window. Her heart beat so hard she could feel it in her throat. "You're getting out," she thought at that shadow. "You're finally getting out." But as the rescuers loaded the cage into the van, the woman paused, turned back to look at the house. Even from 2 lots away, Sarah could see it the way her shoulders dropped, the way she shook her head, slow and heavy. The man beside her said something. "Put a hand on her arm." The woman nodded, climbed into the van, pulled the door shut. The vehicles pulled away. Red taillights fading around the corner. Sarah stood at her window long after they disappeared. Something was wrong. She had seen it plain as day in that woman's shoulders, in that slow shake of her head. The mother dog was out. The puppies were out. But something had happened in that backyard. Something bad enough to make a woman who did this for a living stop and bow her head in the dark. What had they found back there behind that tarp? The smell hit Robert Smith before he reached the backyard. Ammonia so thick it burned the back of his throat. Something rotting underneath. Sweet and wrong. 15 years doing this work, and his nose still had not learned to quit registering it. Some things a body never got used to. He pulled his mask up tighter and pushed through the gate. The yard was a graveyard of forgotten projects. Engine blocks bleeding black oil into packed dirt. A washing machine with its guts hanging out. Stacks of wooden pallets warped and gray from years of weather, and against the far wall. 4 cages. 3 held dogs mixed breeds. Hard to tell what anymore. Thin as rails, coats matted, eyes tracking his flashlight with the flat wariness of animals who expected nothing good from human hands. The 4th cage sat in the darkest corner, shoved under the overhang where the gutters had rusted through. A tarp covered it, weighted down with bricks. "Robert," Emily's voice behind him, tight and quiet. "Over here." He crossed the yard, boots squelching in mud that smelled wrong. Too dark. Too thick. Emily was already crouched by the covered cage, her flashlight cutting through the shadows beneath the tarp. "Help me with this." They lifted the tarp together. The smell grew stronger sour, layered, with something sweeter underneath that turned his stomach. Robert aimed his flashlight into the cage. For a long moment, his brain could not make sense of what he was seeing. A dog, German Shepherd, female. But the word seemed wrong for what lay in that cage. This was bones covered by fur, a spine like a mountain ridge. Ribs he could count from 5 feet away. She was curled around something. Several somethings. Puppies. 5 of them. Tiny. Eyes still sealed shut. Squirming against their mother's belly. No. 4 squirming. 1 still. The mother was licking the still one, pushing it toward her belly with her nose, over and over. The same motion. Steady as a heartbeat. Robert's flashlight wavered. He made himself hold it steady. "How long's that one been gone?" His voice came out rough. Emily leaned closer. Her breath made little clouds in the cold air. "Hours. Maybe since this morning. She won't stop." The mother dog looked up at them. No snarl, no growl, just a quick glance before she went back to her work, licking the small body that would never move again. Her eyes in that moment Robert had to turn his head. He had worked neglect cases before, hoarding situations, fighting rings, animals in conditions that would wake him up at 3 in the morning for months after. But this dog's eyes held something different. Not fear, not anger, something like acceptance. Like she had already done the math and knew how it came out. like she was just waiting for whatever bad thing came next, because bad things were all that ever came. "We take the whole cage," Emily said. Her voice had that flat, professional tone she used when things were bad. "She won't leave them. Pups are too young to move separate. What about the one that's—" "I know." Emily's jaw went tight. "We'll handle it at the shelter. Give her a chance to say goodbye, I guess, if that's what dogs do." Robert nodded, reached for his radio to call in the other cages. The mother watched his hands, watched everything with that terrible patience. When he stepped closer to work the latch, she did not move, did not growl or cower, just curled tighter around her puppies living and dead together, and waited. "Easy, girl," he said, keeping his voice low. "We're getting you out of here." She did not believe him. He could see it in the way her body stayed stiff, the way her eyes tracked every move he made. But she did not fight either. She had quit fighting a long time ago. The cage weighed more than it looked. Robert took one end, Emily the other, and they made their way across the muddy yard toward the gate. Inside, the mother dog lay still. The living puppies mewled and squirmed. The dead one stayed pressed against her belly, held close. As they passed the back porch, a door slammed open. Arthur Miller stood in the yellow light, swaying on his feet, cigarette hanging from his lip, eyes red and unfocused. "That's my property." His words ran together at the edges. "You got no right." The deputy stepped up, one hand raised. "Sir, we have a warrant." "I know my rights. I watch the TV." Robert kept walking. One foot, then the other. Do not stop, do not engage. Just get the animals out. But as he passed, Arthur's gaze dropped to the cage, to the skeleton of a dog inside. "Waste of time," Arthur muttered. "Thing's half dead anyway. Ought to just put it down and be done." Robert's hands tightened on the cage. His knuckles went white against the wire. Emily's fingers touched his arm. Brief, warning. He kept walking. They loaded the cage into the van. The other teams were already bringing out the remaining dogs, 3 more. All in bad shape. The shelter would be full tonight. Emily climbed into the back with the mother's cage, settling herself where she could watch through the wire mesh. "Let's move," she called to the driver. The van pulled away from Arthur Miller's house. Behind them, the flashing lights grew smaller. The yelling faded. The smell finally began to thin. In her cage, the mother dog stopped licking her dead puppy at last. She rested her head on the wire floor. One paw still draped over the small body. Her eyes stayed open. Watching. Waiting. Emily reached through the mesh and set a piece of cooked chicken near the dog's muzzle. The dog looked at it, looked at Emily, looked back at the chicken. She did not eat. "Come on, Mama," Emily whispered. "Just a little. They need you." The dog's nose twitched. Her stomach made a hollow, gurgling sound. Still nothing, not with eyes watching, not with hands so close. She had learned that lesson too many times. Emily pulled her hand back, leaned against the van wall, let out a long breath. 22 pounds? That was her guess when they lifted the cage. 22 pounds for a German shepherd who should weigh 30 at least. The puppies were nursing. She could see them working at the teats, tiny mouths pulling. The mother had almost nothing left to give. But she was giving it anyway. Body eating itself to make milk, bones showing through skin, everything she had, going to keep her babies alive 1 more hour, 1 more day. Emily closed her eyes, opened them again. We got her out. She told herself, that's what counts. We got her out in time. But as the van turned onto the main road, she could not shake the feeling that something had already broken in that cage. something that time and good food and gentle hands might not be enough to fix. The mother dog's eyes found hers through the mesh. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then the dog's gaze dropped to her puppies, to the 4 still moving and the one that was not. Her paw tightened around the still one, drew it closer. Emily watched the way she held that dead puppy, the way she would not let go. She knows, Emily realized, she knows that one is gone. So why was she still holding on? The shelter smelled of bleach and urine and something underneath both the sour tang of animals packed too close, too scared, too long. Delia lay in the corner of her kennel, pressed against the concrete wall, larger than the old cage, cleaner, but still wire between her and the world, still bars, still no way out. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, never fully dark. The hum bored into her skull like a dull headache that would not quit. Around her, dogs barked, howled, threw themselves against metal doors. The racket bounced off concrete and came back twisted, a wall of noise that made her ears flatten and stay that way. She did not move from her corner. 4 puppies nestled against her belly now. 4, not 5. They had taken the still one that first morning the woman with gray hair had lifted it gentle as could be, wrapped it in a soft cloth, carried it away. Delia had watched it go, had not fought, had not made a sound. What good would fighting do? The puppy was already cold, had been cold since she woke to find it stiff beside her, back in the cage under the tarp. She had known then, known and kept licking anyway, kept trying to warm it anyway, because stopping meant admitting what she could not bear to admit. Now she lay curled around the 4 who remained, letting them nurse from a body that was coming apart at the seams. Her muscles cramped with each feeding, her vision swam and blurred. Sometimes she forgot where she was, forgot the new kennel, forgot the rescue, forgot everything except the small mouths pulling at her and the burning need to keep them fed. The woman came twice each day. Emily. The others called her that. She brought food, real food. Not the moldy scraps and stale bread from before. Chicken cut into small pieces, rice mixed with something soft that smelled of meat. Delia did not eat when Emily was watching. She waited. Minutes, hours sometimes, until the footsteps faded down the hall and the lights in the corridor dimmed and she was alone with her puppies. Then she ate, fast, barely chewing, because who knew when someone might take it away? Who knew when the trick would come? The food helped. She could feel her body grabbing hold of it, milk coming easier. Cramps not quite so bad, but 4 puppies needed more than she could make, and her body was still playing catch-up from months of nothing. On the 3rd day, one of the puppies started getting sick. Delia smelled it before she saw it sharp and sour, cutting through the shelter stink. She nosed the puppy. It whimpered, curled into a tight ball, shaking. She licked it, cleaning, warming, the same way she had licked the one they took away. No, not this one too. She licked harder, faster, as if she could lick the sickness right out of its tiny body. The puppy threw up again, something dark in it this time. The smell of blood. Emily found them at the 6 o'clock check. One look at the sick puppy, at the mess on the kennel floor, and her face went pale as paper. "Robert," her voice echoed down the corridor. "Get isolation ready. Now." More hands, more voices. Someone opened the kennel door, reached for the sick one. Delia did not snarl, did not snap. She watched them lift her baby, wrap it in a towel, carry it out of sight. She watched them come back. Take another, then another, 3 puppies showing signs. 3 puppies carried away to somewhere she could not follow. Only one left, the smallest, the runt of the litter, the one who always got pushed aside by his bigger brothers and sisters. Always struggled to find a spot to nurse. Delia curled around him, this last one, and did not move. The next 3 days blurred together like watercolors in the rain. Emily came and went. Needles and tubes and medicines, the sharp smell of disinfectant mixing with the sour smell of sickness. Delia heard words through the kennel wire. Did not understand them. Parvo, that killing sickness that took puppies, survival rates, too young, too weak. She did not need to understand the words. She understood the silences between them, the way Emily's shoulders dropped a little more each time she passed. Second night, the first puppy died. Third morning, 2 more. They did not bring the bodies back. Delia never saw them again, but she knew in the emptiness that spread around her, knew in the way Emily could not look at her when she came to check on the last one. 4 had become 1. The runt, the weakest, the one who should have gone first. Delia licked him without stopping now, kept him pressed against her belly, against the warmth that was all she had left to give. She had quit eating again, not because she did not trust the food, but because eating meant moving, and moving meant letting go of this small body even for a second. She would not let go, not this one, not the last one. Emily stood outside the kennel on the 4th morning, clipboard in hand. The mother dog lay in the same spot she had held for 18 hours straight. The surviving puppy they had started calling him 4, because giving him a real name felt like asking for trouble, was pressed against her belly. Nursing weak and slow. She quit eating. Robert had come up beside her. 3 days now. I know. She can't make milk if she don't eat. And if there's no milk, I know. Emily heard the snap in her own voice, took a breath. I know, but look at her. She won't budge. Won't let go of that puppy for anything. They stood there watching. The mother dog's ribs rose and fell with each shallow breath. Her eyes were open, but not seeing, fixed on something neither of them could make out. What do we do? Robert asked. Emily did not answer right away. She was watching the way the dog's paw stayed curled around the puppy, guarding him even in exhaustion, the way she kept licking that same spot on his head over and over. We wait, she said at last. Keep the puppy going. Keep trying to get her to eat, and hope she figures out she's still got something worth living for. And if she don't... Emily looked at the dog, at the bones showing through, at the coat gone dull, at the eyes that had quit expecting anything good. Then we lose them both. That night, the heat went out. Delia woke to the puppy shivering against her. Small tremors at first, then harder, his tiny body shaking like a leaf in a storm. Cold. It was cold. She pulled him closer, curled tighter, but her own body had so little warmth left. The shaking got worse. His whimpers grew weaker. Delia's heart slammed against her ribs. She knew this, knew what came after, had felt it with the others, with the ones they carried away and never brought back. Not him. Please, not the last one. She began to lick, fast, hard, trying to warm him with the only thing she had. The puppy stopped shivering. Delia froze, then a small twitch, a weak mewl, a tiny paw stretching out. Still alive, still here, still fighting. She pressed her nose against his body, felt the flutter of his heartbeat, fast as a hummingbird's wings. Stay, she thought at him. Stay with me. He burrowed deeper into her fur, went still. Delia did not sleep the rest of that night. She lay there wrapped around the last piece of everything she had, listening to each breath he took. In, out, Every breath a tiny victory. Every breath a question she could not answer. How long could she keep fighting for him when she had clean forgotten how to fight for herself? Linda Walker showed up at the shelter at 10:07 on a Tuesday morning. She had not planned to come. Had told herself 100 times since Rex passed that she was done with dogs, done with the loving and the losing and the empty space they left behind. But the house had gotten too quiet, the backyard too still, and Michael had found her last week standing in the laundry room, holding Rex's old collar, sobbing so hard she could not catch her breath. "Just go look," he had said. "Looking don't cost nothing." So here she was, looking. The volunteer young girl with tired eyes and a clipboard led her down a corridor lined with kennels. Dogs barked and jumped and pressed wet noses against wire, desperate for a glance, a touch, someone to pick them. Linda smiled at a few, kept walking. None of them felt right. None of them felt like anything but what they were, strangers behind bars, wanting something she was not sure she had left to give. They reached the end of the hall. The volunteer stopped. "There's one more," she said, voice dropping low. "Quiet wing, recovery case. She ain't really ready for adoption yet, but—" The girl hesitated. "Would you want to see her anyway?" Linda should have said no, should have thanked her and gone home and told Michael that looking had not helped one bit. "Yes," she heard herself say, "I reckon I would." The quiet wing smelled different, less chaos, more bleach. The barking here was muffled, far away. They stopped at a kennel in the back corner. The volunteer pointed, but did not speak. Linda looked through the mesh. A German shepherd lay curled against the wall, so thin every bone showed through her dull coat. One ear stood up proper, the other flopped down. Scarred and ragged, her eyes were open but empty, staring at nothing, tucked against her belly. A single puppy nursed. Linda's hand went to her mouth. "Name's Delia," the volunteer said quietly. "Came in 2 weeks back. Bad neglect case. Had 5 puppies when they found her. This one's the only one made it." Linda could not look away from those ribs, from the way the dog's tongue moved across the puppy's head. Mechanical. Over and over. "She don't trust people," the girl went on. "Won't eat if anyone's looking. Won't let nobody touch her. But she keeps that puppy alive. Hasn't left him for more than a few seconds since they took the others away." Linda crouched down slow, bringing herself level with the dog's eyes. Delia's gaze shifted. "Found her? Held?" Neither of them moved. Then Delia looked away, back to her puppy, and went on licking. Dismissed. Just like that. Linda stayed where she was. Her knees complained, old joints on cold concrete, but she did not move. "Can I just sit here a while?" The volunteer blinked. "Here, outside the kennel." "Yes, ma'am. Just sit. I won't try to pet her or nothing. Just want to sit." The girl looked uncertain but nodded. "I'll fetch you a chair." Linda sat outside Delia's kennel for 2 hours that first day. She did not talk at first, did not try to coax or comfort, just sat with her hands folded, watching. After an hour, she started speaking. Not to Delia exactly, more to herself, to the air. "We had a dog once. Rex, German Shepherd, same as you. Michael brought him home from a job site when he was maybe 2 years old. Some lowlife had been using him for... Well, it don't bear repeating." Delia's good ear twitched. "First year we had him, he bit Michael 3 times, drew blood twice. I told Michael we ought to find someone who knew what they were doing. Michael said no. Said Rex just needed time to learn not every hand was going to hurt." Linda paused, watched the slow rhythm of Delia's tongue on the puppy's fur. "Took 3 years before Rex would let me scratch his ears without flinching. 3 whole years. But once he trusted us." Her voice caught. "Well, once he decided we were his people, that was that. 15 years, slept at the foot of our bed every single night. He used to cry if Michael left for work without saying goodbye." Delia had stopped licking. Her head stayed down, but her eye, the one facing Linda, was open, watching. "He passed 6 months ago. Cancer in his liver. Nothing they could do." Linda wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "House has been so quiet since. I keep expecting to hear his nails clicking on the kitchen floor. Keep looking for him in his spot by the window." She fell silent. The shelter hummed around them, distant barking. Footsteps. The squeak of a mop bucket somewhere down the hall. Delia's eye stayed on her. "I ain't trying to replace him," Linda said finally. "Can't replace 15 years. Can't replace what he meant to us. But Michael says the house needs life in it again. Says I need something to look after besides my own grief." She leaned forward, dropping her voice. "I don't know if that's you. Don't know if you'd even want folks like us, after everything you've been through, but I'm going to come back tomorrow, and the day after that, and I'm going to sit right here and talk, because that's all I know how to do. Maybe one day you'll decide I'm worth a chance, or maybe you won't. Either way, I'll be here." She stood up slow, joints popping like green wood in a fire. "See you tomorrow, girl." Delia did not move, did not watch her go. But as Linda walked away, a sound came from the kennel. Small, not quite a whine, not quite a growl, something in between. Linda stopped, turned back. Delia's tail had moved, just a little, a twitch against the concrete. Then it was still again, and the dog's eyes were closed, and Linda could not swear she had seen anything at all, but she smiled anyway. "Yeah," she said softly. "See you tomorrow." Linda came back the next day, and the next, and every day after that. She brought a cushion for the hard plastic chair, brought a thermos of coffee, brought pictures of Rex that she held up to the wire. Even knowing Delia could not understand what they were, she talked about everything. Michael's bad knee, her daughter in Phoenix who never called enough, the garden gone to weeds since Rex died because being out there without him hurt too much. Delia listened, or seemed to. Her ear would twitch at certain words. Her eye would track Linda's movements. Her body would shift just a little toward the mesh. But she never came closer, never ate while Linda watched, never dropped her guard. On the 5th day, Linda decided to push. She stood up from her chair, opened the kennel door slow, stepped inside. Delia came apart. Not toward Linda, away. Scrambling backward, pressing into the corner, shoving the puppy behind her, teeth bared, but silent. No growl, no sound at all. Just that frozen terror. Linda stopped cold, raised her hands, took a step back. Okay, girl. Too fast. My fault." She backed out, pulled the door shut, sat down in her chair again. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her hands shook. Delia stayed jammed in the corner, trembling, for a good 20 minutes before she eased down enough to lie flat. The puppy crawled out from behind her, found her belly, started nursing. Linda watched them through the wire, eyes wet. "I ain't going to rush you," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Got nowhere else to be. We'll take it at your speed, however long that is." Delia's eye cracked open, found Linda's face, held it a long moment, then she looked away. But this time felt different. Not like being dismissed, more like someone thinking it over, like someone starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this one might turn out different from all the rest. Emily caught up with Linda on day 10. "Mrs. Walker, got a minute?" Linda looked up from her chair. Emily's face was tight, her shoulders stiff. "What is it?" Emily glanced at Delia, then back, lowered her voice. "She ain't eating. Going on 3 days now. We've tried everything hand-feeding, different foods, warming it up. She just won't touch it." Linda's stomach dropped. "What's that mean?" "Means her body's giving out. She's still nursing that puppy, still pouring out everything she's got, but she ain't taking anything back in." Emily paused. "If she don't start eating soon, she ain't going to make it." Linda stared through the mesh at Delia, at the ribs sharper than yesterday, at the dull coat, the hollow eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would she quit eating now?" Emily was quiet a moment. "Sometimes they just give up, after everything she's been through, losing those other puppies. Sometimes the body keeps going, but something inside just stops." "But she's got him. She's got 4. Ain't that enough?" Emily's silence said everything. Linda pushed herself out of the chair, her hands curled into fists. "Leave us be for a while," she said. "Mrs. Walker, please just give us an hour. There's something I need to try." Emily hesitated, then nodded, walked away. Linda turned back to the kennel. Delia lay flat on the concrete, eyes half shut, one paw draped over the puppy. "She's quitting," Linda thought, deciding she ain't worth saving. The question hung in the stale shelter air. How do you make someone believe they matter when they have already stopped believing it themselves? The smell of chicken hit Delia before she saw it. Linda sat outside the kennel in her usual spot, but today she held something wrapped in foil. She peeled it back slow, letting the scent drift through the wire mesh. Roasted chicken, real meat. Not the dry kibble the shelter gave her, not the canned stuff that smelled like metal and old grease. This was something else, warm, rich. The kind of smell that reached down into her belly and twisted. Her stomach cramped hard. A sound came out of her, low and shameful, the wet gurgle of guts demanding what she had refused them. She pressed her nose flat against the concrete, tried to ignore it. "Brought this from home," Linda said, her voice easy, like they were old friends catching up. "Michael cooked it last night. Man can't manage much in the kitchen, but he does right by a chicken." Delia's nostrils flared. The smell was everywhere now, filling the kennel. Filling her skull, spit pooled under her tongue. Her whole body shook. 4 squirmed against her belly, hunting for a teat. She felt him latch on, felt the familiar pull, felt her body straining to give what it no longer had. 3 days since she had eaten. The milk was thinning to almost nothing. She could feel it feel herself, drying up from the inside out. Linda tore off a small piece of chicken and set it just inside the kennel door. Close enough to smell. Too far to reach without moving. "I'm just going to sit right here," Linda said. "Take all the time you need." Delia stared at the chicken, stared at Linda, back at the chicken. Her legs twitched. The urge to move, to eat, to survive screamed through every nerve. But Linda was watching, eyes fixed on her through the wire. Delia had eaten in front of humans before, back at the old place, Arthur's place. She remembered what happened, the hand reaching in, the bowl kicked away, the boot. Eat too fast, you get kicked. Eat too slow, it gets taken. Don't eat at all. You get nothing tomorrow either. She had learned. Learned that watching eyes meant danger, meant pain, meant the food was never really hers. She turned her head away. 4 mewled against her, his small mouth losing hold and finding it again. Weaker than yesterday. The milk was not enough anymore. Linda did not move, did not speak, just sat there waiting, patient as stone. Minutes stretched out. The chicken smell faded a little as it cooled. But it was still there, still pulling at her. Delia's body started to shake harder, not cold hunger, the war inside her between what she needed and what she feared. She had to eat. 4 needed her to eat. If she did not eat, there would be no milk. No milk meant. She pushed herself up on legs that wobbled like a newborn colt's, took 1 step toward the chicken, stopped. Linda was still watching, still there. Delia's legs gave out. She dropped back to the concrete, panting, heart slamming against her ribs. She could not do it, could not eat with eyes on her, could not trust that the hand would not come, that the boot would not follow. 4 whimpered, nosing at her empty belly. "I'm sorry," she thought at him. "I can't. I just can't." Then 4 moved, hungry, frustrated, too young to understand why his mother would not get what was right there. He squirmed away from Delia's belly, crawled across the kennel floor on wobbly legs, nose lifted toward that smell. He reached the piece of chicken, his tiny mouth closed around it. Delia lunged. Pure instinct, the same drive that had kept her breathing through 2 years in Arthur's cages, the same reflex that made her guard every crumb, every scrap, every morsel. Her teeth clamped on 4's scruff, not gentle, not the way she usually moved him. Hard, yanking him back from the food, pulling him away. 4 yelped, high and sharp and terrified. The sound cut through her like broken glass. She let go, but too late. 4 tumbled across the concrete, rolled onto his side. Lay there, shaking. His little body trembled with fear. His eyes barely open, these past days were wide now, staring at her, afraid of her. Delia stood frozen. The chicken lay between them, where it had fallen from 4's mouth. She looked at her puppy, at the way he pressed himself against the kennel wall, trying to get as far from her as he could, at the whimpers leaking out of him. She looked down at herself, the bones jutting through her coat, the hollow pit of her belly, what she had become. A creature who hurt her own baby, for food, for a piece of meat she was not even brave enough to eat. No better than him. No different from Arthur. The knowing hit her like a kick to the gut. She backed away from 4, backed away from the chicken, pressed herself into the corner of the kennel, as far from both as the walls would let her go, and she did something she had not done in all the years since Arthur first locked her in a cage. She turned her face to the wall and gave up, not sleeping, not resting, surrendering. Linda watched through the wire mesh, her hand clamped over her mouth. She had seen the whole thing, the lunge, the yelp, the way Delia had frozen and looked at herself like she was seeing a monster, and now the way she lay with her face to the wall, the stillness in her body, the way the life seemed to drain right out of her. 4 huddled against the opposite wall, shaking, alone. Neither moved toward the other. Linda stood up. Her legs had gone numb, pins and needles shooting through them. She wanted to open that kennel door, wanted to push them back together, wanted to fix it somehow. But she knew better. 15 years with Rex had taught her that much. Whatever was breaking in that kennel could not be fixed by human hands. Not this way. Not right now. She sat back down, pulled out her phone, typed a message to Michael with fingers that would not hold steady. "Come to the shelter. Please. Now." Then she put the phone away and watched. Delia lay motionless, face to the wall. Her ribs barely rose and fell. Her eyes were open, but seeing nothing. 4 stayed pressed against the far side, crying soft and thin. alone and cold and not understanding why his mother had turned into something to run from. The chicken sat untouched between them, going cold, meaning nothing now. Linda had watched dogs give up before, had seen the life go out of their eyes, watched them stop eating, stop caring, stop fighting. But she had never seen it happen in a single moment like this. Never watched a creature look at what it had done and decide right then and there that it did not deserve to keep going. She thinks she's a monster, Linda realized. She thinks she's become the very thing that hurt her. The afternoon light shifted through the shelter windows. Shadows stretched across the concrete. Four's crying got weaker. His small body shivered now, cold without his mother's warmth. Delia did not move, did not look at him, did not do anything except lie there, face to the wall, waiting for an end that would not come fast enough. Linda gripped the wire mesh until her knuckles went white. Turn around, she thought at Delia. He needs you. Look at him, please. But Delia was done looking, done trying, done. And Linda sat on the wrong side of those bars, helpless to change a thing. The question was not whether Delia would come back from this. The question was whether Four would make it through the night without her, and whether Delia would even notice if he did not. The shelter went dark at 9. Overhead lights clicked off one by one, leaving only the amber glow of the emergency strips along the baseboards. The barking from the main wing faded to whimpers and the shuffle of bodies settling in for the night. Footsteps retreated down the corridor. A door closed. A lock turned. Quiet. Delia lay with her face to the wall. She had not moved in hours, had not turned when they came to check on her, had not lifted her head when Emily knelt outside the kennel, speaking soft, asking her please to eat something. She was done. Done pretending any of it mattered. Four was behind her somewhere. She could hear his sounds, the scrape of his body against concrete, the weak mewling that came and went like a bad radio signal. He had quit crying for her an hour ago, quit expecting her to come. Good. Better he learn now. Better he figure out she was not worth counting on. The wall in front of her was gray. Concrete blocks, pitted and stained from years of kennels and cages and animals who had come and gone. She stared at it without seeing. This is what I am. She thought if dogs think in thoughts at all, this is what I always was. The memory of Four's yelp echoed through her skull, the way he had looked at her after, not with the blind trust of a nursing puppy, but with fear. Real fear. The same fear she used to feel every time Arthur's footsteps came down the stairs. She had become the monster. There was no coming back from that. Hours crawled by, or minutes. Time had quit meaning anything. The temperature dropped. The shelter's heating system clicked and hummed. Fighting the cold that seeped through concrete and metal, in the main wing, dogs huddled together for warmth, sharing body heat the way pack animals do. In Delia's kennel, there was no huddling, no warmth shared, just two bodies on opposite sides of the same small space, and something broken between them. Four started to shiver. Delia heard it, the tiny tremors, the chattering that came from a body too small to warm itself. She had heard that sound before. From 3, the night before he quit breathing. From 2 and 1 and 5. In the sick room, before they carried them away and never brought them back. Shivering meant cold. Cold meant weak. Weak meant quit thinking about it. Don't matter. Nothing matters. She pressed her nose harder against the wall. Four whimpered, thin, reedy. Not calling for her anymore, just hurting, the way bodies do when they cannot hold it in. Delia's good ear twitched. Stop listening. You don't get to care anymore. You lost that right. The whimpering kept on, weaker now, gaps between the sounds growing longer. Something stirred in her chest, something she had been trying to smother, trying to bury, trying to kill right alongside everything else. He's cold, he's alone, he's dying, so let him die. Better than having a mother like you. The thought was hard and clear, and she believed it down to her bones. But her body did not believe it. Her body remembered things her mind wanted to forget. The weight of 5 pressed against her ribs, the warmth of 3's tongue on her muzzle, the way 1 always stretched a paw toward her, even in the deepest sleep. Her body remembered she was still a mother, even if she did not deserve to be. The shivering behind her turned violent. Small, desperate jerks of a body losing its fight with the cold. Delia's leg twitched. Don't. Stay put. Let it end. 4 made a sound, not a whimper this time, something smaller, something that barely made it past his throat. Delia's body moved before her mind could stop it. She did not choose to get up. Her legs just unfolded, shaking, barely holding her weight. She turned from the wall. 4 lay curled into a tight ball against the far side of the kennel, shaking so hard his whole body vibrated against the concrete. Eyes squeezed shut, breathing fast and shallow. Delia took a step toward him. Her legs almost buckled. She caught herself. Took another step. 4 heard her coming. His eyes flew open and the fear was still there. She saw it plain, the memory of her teeth on his scruff. The yelp, the fall. He flattened himself against the wall, trying to disappear into the concrete. Delia stopped, stood there swaying, looking at her son. He's scared of me. That should have turned her back to the wall, should have proved everything she had decided about herself. But he was shivering, and the sound of it, that tiny, helpless rattling, was louder than her shame. She lay down, not touching him, just close. Close enough that her body heat might reach him, close enough that he could feel her there without feeling trapped. 4 went stiff. His shaking got worse for a second, fear piled on top of cold. Delia did not move, did not reach for him, did not try to pull him in. She just lay there, breathing, waiting. Minutes passed. 4's shaking started to slow. Not because he was warmer yet, but because something in him was figuring out what his mind had not caught up to. She ain't hurting me. She ain't leaving. She's just there. He uncurled a little. His nose lifted, testing the air, finding her smell milk and fur, and something underneath that meant safe. Even when everything else said, run. He took 1 step toward her, stopped, took another. Delia held still as stone. 4 reached her side. Paused, then, with nothing left to lose, he pressed himself against her belly. Delia let out a slow breath. She curved her body around him, not grabbing, not trapping, just sheltering, letting him choose. He burrowed in deeper, found a teat, started to nurse. There was almost nothing to give. She felt the dry pull, the weak trickle that was more want than nourishment, but 4 did not seem to care. He nursed like it was his first meal, and maybe, in a way, it was. Delia began to lick him, slow at first, then faster, finding the old rhythm, the same motion she had made 1,000 times before, with puppies who were gone now, in cages she would never see again. But this was now. This was here. This was the one who stayed. She licked and licked, warming him, cleaning him, giving him the only thing she had left. 4 quit shivering. His body went soft against hers. And somewhere in that dark kennel, in that long night, something shifted, something small, something that did not have a name. Emily found them at 7 the next morning. She stopped in the doorway, coffee halfway to her mouth, and stared. Delia lay in the center of the kennel, not in the corner, not facing the wall. 4 was curled against her belly, nursing slow and steady. Delia's paw rested over him, gentle, guarding. And Delia's eyes were open, watching Emily, alert, not empty anymore. Emily set down her coffee and crouched by the mesh. "Well now," she said quietly, "look who decided to come back." Delia did not move, but she did not look away either. Emily reached for her clipboard, made a note with a hand that was not quite steady. Day 16. Mother made contact with Pup on her own. Nobody pushed her. She did it herself. She wanted to write more, wanted to put down what she was seeing, the way something dead had come back to life in that kennel overnight. But there were no words in any chart for that. She looked at Delia, at 4, at the small, stubborn thing that had made it through the longest night. Then she stood up and headed for the front desk. There was a phone call she needed to make. 6 weeks after the rescue. Delia stood at the open kennel door and did not move. Emily held it wide. Linda waited in the corridor, leash in one hand. The other pressed flat against her thigh to keep it from shaking. 4 sat at Linda's feet, tail going like a windshield wiper, looking back at his mother. Delia stared at the open door, at the hallway beyond, at the world she had not walked through on her own legs in longer than she could remember. Her legs trembled, her heart knocked hard against ribs that were less sharp now, padded by weeks of steady meals and slow healing. But the fear was still there, old and deep, telling her that open doors meant hands reaching in, meant trucks and cages and losing everything all over again. "Come on, girl," Linda said, her voice low and easy. "We're going home." Home. The word sat strange in the air. Delia did not know what it meant, did not know if she had ever known. She took one step, stopped, took another. The corridor stretched out long and bright, smelling of bleach and other dogs. She had come through here once before, carried in a cage, barely conscious. Now she walked it on her own 4 feet. 4 bounced toward her, then back to Linda, then toward her again, impatient, ready. He had never known cages the way she had. The world was still full of open doors to him. Delia reached the end of the hall, a door made of glass, sunlight pouring through. She stopped. Beyond the glass, a parking lot, a truck with its tailgate down. Blankets spread in the bed. Not rusted, not threatening. Just a truck. Michael Walker stood beside it, hands in his pockets, squinting against the morning glare. Linda crouched down next to Delia, not touching, just there. "I know it's scary," she said. "I know you don't know what's out there waiting. But I can tell you this, whatever it is, you won't face it by yourself. Not anymore." Delia looked at her, at the face she had watched through wire mesh for weeks, at the eyes that never looked away, never got impatient, never asked for more than she could give. She looked at 4, sitting by the glass door, tail sweeping the tile floor. She looked at the sunlight. And she walked through. The drive took 32 minutes. Delia lay in the truck bed, 4 pressed warm against her side, watching the world roll by, trees, houses, other trucks, a sky so blue and wide it made her dizzy. She had forgotten what outside looked like, forgotten that anything existed past wire mesh and concrete floors. The truck slowed, turned, stopped. Michael came around back and dropped the tailgate. Linda climbed up and sat beside Delia, not rushing, not pulling. "This is it," she said. "This is home." Delia lifted her head. A house, white with green shutters, paint peeling a little at the corners, a porch with 2 rocking chairs, one of them worn down more than the other, a yard grass, real grass, stretching back to a fence lined with bushes gone wild. She had never seen anything like it. 4 scrambled over the tailgate, hit the ground running, and stuck his nose into everything he could reach. His tail had not stopped since they left the shelter. Delia stood up slow, walked to the edge of the tailgate, looked down, 2 feet to the ground. Maybe less. It felt like a canyon. Linda climbed down first, stood there with her arms loose at her sides, waiting. "Whenever you're ready," she said. "Ain't no rush." Delia jumped. Her paws hit grass. Soft, cool, alive under her feet. She stood frozen, all 4 legs planted, feeling earth instead of concrete for the first time in years. The ground gave a little beneath her weight, springy, forgiving, nothing like wire or stone. She lowered her head and breathed in. Grass, dirt, earthworms, something that had dug a hole under the fence recently, a whole world of smells she had forgotten existed. 4 came barreling back, nipped at her ear, took off again, wanting her to chase. Delia did not chase. Not yet, but she lifted her head and watched him run, and something in her chest unclenched, just a little. The first week was hard. Delia stuck to corners, jumped at sudden sounds, would not eat if anyone stood too close. But Linda was patient. Michael was quiet. And, bit by bit, Delia started learning that not every house was a cage. She learned the food bowl would be full every morning, whether she had cleaned it the night before or not. She learned the bed Linda put by the window, the spot where afternoon sun pooled warm and golden, was hers, and nobody would drag it away. She learned that hands could touch without hurting, that voices could rise without meaning danger, that doors could open onto something besides pain. Day 8. She ate while Linda stood in the room, day 12. She let Michael scratch behind her good ear just once, just quick, but she did not flinch. Day 19. She walked out the back door on her own, stood in the middle of the yard, and turned her face up to the sun. Linda watched from the kitchen window, her coffee going cold in her hands. "Well, I'll be," she murmured. A year slipped by. Delia lay in the backyard, stretched out in the grass, her coat thick and glossy under the afternoon light. Gray had crept into the fur around her muzzle. The torn ear still flopped always would, but somehow it looked distinguished now instead of broken. 4, grown tall, almost as big as his mother, was chasing a squirrel along the fence line. He never caught them. Did not seem to mind. Linda sat on the porch, a glass of lemonade sweating in the heat, ice clinking soft when she shifted. The radio in the kitchen played something old and slow. Patsy Cline, maybe, or Loretta Lynn. Michael dozed in the rocker beside her, newspaper open across his chest, rising and falling with each breath. "You reckon she's happy?" he asked without opening his eyes. Linda watched Delia, watched the slow rise and fall of her breathing, the way her tail twitched when 4 ran past, the way she had settled herself right in the middle of the yard, where she could see every fence post and gate at once. Some fears never let go all the way. Some hurts healed over but stayed tender underneath. That was not the same as unhappy. "I don't know if dogs think about happy," Linda said, "but I think she's home. Maybe for the first time ever." Michael grunted, settled deeper into the rocker. 4 gave up on the squirrel and came trotting back, tongue hanging out, and flopped down next to his mother. He pushed his head against her side. Delia lifted her paw and draped it over him. Small gesture. Automatic. Almost Then her tail brushed the grass. Once, twice. Linda smiled and raised her lemonade. 50 miles off. Sarah Johnson stood at her kitchen window. The lot where Arthur Miller's house used to be sat empty now. Overgrown with weeds and wild grass, the county had torn the place down 6 months after the trial said it was not fit for anything. Sarah did not know what had become of the dogs they took that night, had never asked. Some answers were better left alone. But every now and then, late in the evening when the house got too quiet and the memories pushed too close, she thought about that phone call, about the voice on the other end asking what she had heard, like something giving up. She had told them, like something with nothing left. She wondered sometimes if that something had found its way back, found a place where giving up was not the only choice. She hoped so. Lord, she hoped so. The afternoon sun came slanting through her window. She turned from the empty lot and put the kettle on for tea. Life kept moving. It always did. In the Walkers' backyard, Delia opened her eyes. 4 had fallen asleep against her, his breathing slow and even. The sun lay warm on her coat. The grass was soft beneath her. She lifted her head and looked around. At the fence. At the house. At the 2 humans on the porch, one sleeping, one watching. For a second her ears went flat. Old habit, waiting for the trick, the pain, the bad thing that always followed anything good. Nothing came. The sun kept shining. The grass stayed soft. The humans stayed still. Delia put her head back down, let out a long, slow breath. She did not know if this was happy, did not have a word for what hummed quiet in her chest. But for the first time she could remember, she was not bracing for what came next. She was just here. In this yard, in this moment, in this life she had somehow stumbled into against every odd. 4 shifted in his sleep, pressing closer. Delia's tail moved across the grass, once, twice. Somewhere inside her, in the place where fear used to live, something else had taken root. Something without a name. Something that did not need one. She closed her eyes. The afternoon stretched on warm and slow and ordinary, and that, maybe, was the most extraordinary thing of all. If you have made it this far, you have been carrying something with you through these pages. Maybe it sits heavy in your chest right now. Maybe it feels tender, like a bruise you forgot you had until something pressed against it. That is all right. Some stories move through us that way, quiet and unfinished, stirring up things we thought we had put to rest. Many of us know what it is to watch from a window and wonder if we should have done something sooner. Some of us have loved a creature who could not tell us what they needed, and we did our best anyway. Perhaps you have been the one waiting for someone to see you, or the one who finally picked up the phone when it would have been easier to let it ring. These things do not need to be resolved. They do not need to make sense or add up to something neat. They are allowed to just be part of the ordinary, tender way we stumble through. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening.